Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and fair warning up front, this will not be a pleasant video. It touches on some very difficult topics, it will be heavily opinion-focused, and due to the nature of the material being discussed, it will undoubtedly be instantly demonetized by YouTube, and it will also undoubtedly be deranked and buried. Not to mention, this video will probably piss a few people off. I would also strongly urge you not to listen to this video with young children around due to the nature of the subject matter. I don't want to tell you how to parent your children. If you want them to listen, that's fine, but I don't want to leave you scrambling to pause the video. Still, I have never been one to shy away from something just because it's difficult, and the subject matter is definitely that. And as I have been battling this exact topic on Twitter, I wanted to put voice to microphone so people would have a more difficult time misconstruing what it is that I'm saying. As many of you are aware, there has been a brand new controversy within the games industry surrounding Alec Holowka, one of the developers of Night in the Woods, who this weekend took his own life. It also surrounds the public shaming and lynch mob mentality that has dogpiled the man on the internet in the days leading up to his taking his own life. This also involves the usual professional victimhood suspects. Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian, and even Brianna Wu has resurfaced as a result of this controversy. Now, I want it stated clearly and in no uncertain terms that I do think it likely that the man was guilty of what he was accused. The issue I have, is with the cancel culture mentality of what happened and the problem that such a destructive and devastating issue such as this being tried not in a court of law, but in the court of public opinion. Now, this all started with Zoe Quinn posting on Twitter a lengthy and detailed accounting of her relationship with Holowka, in which she outlined an extremely abusive relationship. She discussed how they had talked before he convinced her to come stay with him for a couple of weeks, and then refusing to allow her to leave once she arrived there, being emotionally and physically abusive during the time she was present. She also stated that the night Gamergate started, she had vague booked about the whole thing, which, if any of you are unfamiliar with what vague booking is, it is an intentionally vague attention-seeking social media post designed to elicit engagement and responses from others. Of course, Zoe Quinn received a great deal of sympathy for her extremely public accusation, including people like Anita Sarkeesian, who always seems to pop up whenever victimhood points can be earned somehow. Other accusers of Holowka came forward, and as a result of the social media shitstorm that was brewing, the rest of the Night in the Woods team decided to part ways with Holowka. Shortly after, Holowka took his own life. His sister posted an announcement on Twitter about this, and while I don't want to directly attack anyone here, I don't believe that would be helpful for anyone, his sister did immediately start off with the standard belief that most within that particular ideological circle conform to of believing survivors, which is the mentality of listen and believe all accusers. Ironically enough, this has been inaccurately taken by many as her admitting guilt on behalf of her brother, which is not actually the case. And in this statement, she said, "We tried our best to support Alec, but in the end, he felt he had lost too much." The reason being is when an accusation like this is made, regardless of guilt or innocence, the accused automatically becomes labeled as guilty. They invariably lose their jobs, and due to the accusations made, they are forever blacklisted within the industry due to no other development teams willing to shoulder the public shaming should they ever hire such a person. Those accused are more often than not hounded off of social media, ousted from their jobs, and completely unpersoned in every way. And in this particular case, while he himself was probably guilty, it was all driven based primarily on the word of Zoe Quinn, a person whose moral and ethical integrity are very much in question. A person who sabotaged a game jam because she did not get her way. A person who kickstarted a game for over $80,000 and then subsequently fucked off and spent all the money telling people she ran out of funds while vacationing in Tokyo at the time. Zoe Quinn and her ilk have made their living as professional victims, and as such, considering this allegation was brought forward nearly 5 years to the day after Gamergate started and close to a full decade after the incident allegedly occurred, one must wonder the motivation behind the accusation due to the source. And continuing to try to glom onto any situation to cling to relevance, Anita Sarkeesian also tried to play the helpful public figure after the demise of a person that just a few days prior she had celebrated his being pilloried on social media. Brianna Wu even got into the fray, once again crying Gamergate in order to link herself to this tragedy, calling for the police to do their jobs, even though no complaint or report to the police has ever been filed, and even managed to outright state that Gamergate was directly responsible for several mass shootings. And this, in Brianna Wu's case, is what happens when someone ties themselves as a victim to a supposed movement that no longer even exists. It is the boogeyman that she must link anything and everything to, because if she doesn't, then what little social capital she has left disappears into ashes and dust. Now, I, of course, posted my own extremely unthrilled opinion about this situation on Twitter, stating, "I hope Zoe Quinn's quest to remain relevant was worth it. It cost a life." Let me be clear. If you have suffered sexual assault, take it to the police. The guilty should be punished in a court of law, not the court of public opinion. False accusers should face legal consequences. Which a fair amount of people agreed with this sentiment. Of course, those that follow the same ideological narrative as Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian were quick to malign me as quickly as possible, including a couple of smaller Twitch streamers that I'd never even heard of before like this one, trying in an exceptionally weak manner to go after my Discord partnership and accusing me of stoking a hate mob against survivors. Now, the reason why I said take it to the police should be relatively self-evident to most. If you follow me on Twitter, I know I've already said all of this before. It is because these allegations are severe in the extreme. These are the types of allegations that can and have destroyed lives. As such, I stand by my statements that such allegations should be conducted through a court of law and not the court of public opinion. Now, the reason why that should be a simple enough concept to grasp is that emotion clouds judgment. Not only that, but false allegations have been made in the past. People have even committed suicide over being falsely accused of this exact same type of thing. The court of public opinion is mob rule, led by emotion and completely devoid of fact in most instances. The court of public opinion is one of guilt, period. Not innocent until proven guilty, not even guilty until proven innocent, just guilty, period. Even if you're innocent and can prove your innocence, more often than not, huge numbers of people are disinclined to listen or to believe the facts of the situation while they themselves tout, listen and believe to the accusers who put forth such allegations into a public forum, usually with no evidence whatsoever to support their claims. There's a precept within criminal law called Blackstone's ratio. Many of you will recognize it as the common thought exercise. Would you prefer a single innocent man to be falsely convicted of a crime if it meant 10 guilty men were also convicted, or would you rather 10 guilty men go unpunished if it meant that a single innocent man was prevented from being falsely convicted? It's a simple enough exercise at face value, but it's actually much more complex than that, and it is at the core of this particular argument that I've been making on social media all weekend long. John Adams stated in the document Adams' Argument for the Defense the following: "The reason is because it's of more importance to the community that innocence should be protected than it is that guilt should be punished. For guilt and crimes are so frequent in the world that all of them cannot be punished, and many times they happen in such a manner that it is not of much consequence to the public whether they are punished or not. But when innocence itself is brought to the bar and condemned, especially to die, the subject will exclaim, 'It is immaterial to me whether I behave well or ill, for virtue itself is no security.' And if such a sentiment as this should take place in the mind of the subject, there would be an end to all security whatsoever. Innocence should be protected. That is of paramount importance. That is why our legal system follows the precept innocent until proven guilty. That is why, in court, guilt must be determined beyond a reasonable doubt, because if our legal system followed the precepts of the court of public opinion, as Adams said, it would make no matter whether a person behave with or without virtue, because the content of their character and the fruits of their actions no longer matter in determining guilt or innocence. What would instead matter would merely be mob rule, what people believe a person to be regardless of material fact. That is why our legal system functions the way it does. It will punish the wrongdoer. It will call to task those who have committed crimes and violated laws when people have been determined to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, to be sure. But its primary driving focus within its very creation is to preserve innocence, to protect the one virtuous man from being falsely convicted of a crime he did not commit. It is always safer to err in acquitting than punishing, on the part of mercy than the part of justice. What this gaming Me Too movement that Sarkeesian was so excited for is nothing more than a continuation of what we saw with the Salem witch trials. Something I also pointed out on Twitter, and some dude stupidly proclaimed I was citing Monty Python when I talked about the sink or float test, but no, that much was very accurate with the Salem witch trials. It was the swimming test, and I'll go ahead and read the history.com description of it. As part of the infamous swimming test, accused witches were dragged to the nearest body of water, stripped to their undergarments, bound, and then tossed in to see if they would sink or float. Since witches were believed to have spurned the sacrament of baptism, it was thought that the water would reject their body and prevent them from submerging. According to this logic, an innocent person would sink like a stone, but a witch would simply bob on the surface. The victim typically had a rope tied around their waist so they could be pulled from the water if they sank, but it wasn't unusual for accidental drowning deaths to occur. And we are seeing a more severe but less physically lethal continuation of that mentality in the court of public opinion, except here, the accused is tossed in. If they float, they're guilty. If they sink and drown, they were likely guilty anyways. They just weren't able to prove their innocence. Alec Holoka was likely guilty. This is also one of those times where Zoe Quinn might have potentially been telling the truth. We'll never know. And in all honesty, this would have never bore out in a court of law to begin with because she never went to the police with any of this. In fact, she still has not done so, wherein lies the problem I have with all of this. She waited. She waited for nearly a decade to drop this story like an atomic bomb into the court of public opinion. Other people piled on, then the social media hounds went to work, and as a result, the man became feeling completely helpless and powerless and ended it all. And now his sister has protected her account. Zoe Quinn has shut hers down, although that is extremely likely to be temporary until she can reactivate it and score some additional victim points. And accusations are being hurled to and from both sides of the aisle in this argument. Now, these people will claim they resort to the court of public opinion because the justice system doesn't work, that they never get justice because such things are difficult to prove, and they're correct. It is difficult to prove. You know what makes it more difficult? Waiting nearly an entire decade before bringing things to light. In the meantime, leaving predators to prey on other unsuspecting women. Yes, predators should be brought to justice, absolutely. But for that, the crimes themselves must be reported and they must be investigated. And for the greatest chance of success, I hate to say it, but you cannot delay and you cannot hesitate. They will say they feel powerless, that they feel fear over a person because of their perceived social influence or authoritative standing within an industry. And I can comprehend how daunting that would be, but if anything, that should spur you on to quicker action, not hesitation. Because if a person abuses their position of power or authority with one person, it stands to reason that they might just do the same thing with somebody else. The court of public opinion is not the place to air such accusations. If you have been harmed, go to the police, seek out an attorney, take it to the justice system because of the guilty, period, mentality of the Twitter mobs can and have destroyed innocent lives. Holoka might not have been an innocent, but that will now never be determined. And while some of you will sit here and cheer the man's death, I will not join you. Because even if he was 100% guilty of everything he has been accused of, it would still be a tragic waste. The moment a life is removed from this world, the moment a person is driven to that point, any hope of anything good coming from it also disappears. Now, there will be no chance for him to do anything good with his life, no chance to make amends, no redemption, no nothing. Just simply a waste. And all the while, Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian, and Brianna Wu, not to mention all of their followers, are busily plying their professional victimhood trade off of the back of social media outrage. Mob mentality in the court of public opinion is never the proper place to determine guilt or innocence of a human being. It is the new Salem witch trials, except there is no end to the insanity in sight. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.